Is working and you can see my screen and hear my voice. This is the first lesson on the Rachmaninoff prescribed work, and in order to complete the lesson you'll need to have the quiz open on Edmodo, as well as have access to YouTube in order to find the pieces and videos that I'll be referring to. Okay, so today we're going to be focusing on three core things. The first one is to find out a little bit about Rachmaninoff. The second is to focus on the Paganini theme, which the piece is based on. And lastly, look at something called the Dies Irae, which I'll refer to later on in the lesson. It's important that you're getting notes down throughout, so do think about your workflow, particularly if you're typing up your notes. Obviously, you can pause the video whenever you need to. Okay. So Rachmaninoff was a Russian pianist and composer from the late Romantic period into the 20th century. He was born in Russia, in the northwest of Russia, in 1873. And he studied piano, but actually with his mother first, and later he went on to the St. Petersburg Conservatory, where he was able to meet some of the leading musicians of the day, including Tchaikovsky and Anton Rubinstein. Once he graduated, Rachmaninoff actually focused on several large projects, particularly with composition, but sadly his first symphony didn't go down too well. It was an absolute fiasco. Apparently this was largely due to the poor conducting, but this actually led him to take a break from composition, and luckily he then worked successfully as a conductor for a long time. Eventually, his confidence was restored with the great success of his second piano concerto. This is probably, along with the Rhapsody, his most famous work. In 1917, we had the Bolshevik Revolution, and with this, Rachmaninoff left Russia and temporarily lived in Stockholm and Copenhagen before settling down in the US later in 1918. For a time, he lived in Switzerland, but eventually returned to the US, and he was there pretty much until his death in 1943. He sadly died of cancer at the age of 69. Okay, so your first task is actually to pause the video now to find a little bit more information about the composer. On Edmodo, you should see in the quiz question 1, which relates to this. So spend a little bit of time finding out some more information about Rachmaninoff that I haven't shared, and make sure this is on Edmodo. Once you've done that, don't send or save the quiz, just leave it open and carry on with the video, but pause it now. Okay, hopefully you've done that and you're not just continuing. If you are, imagine me looking very disappointed right now. Anyway, moving on. So Rachmaninoff was actually a very prolific composer, but he's normally noted, or most famous, I suppose, for his piano writing. Some examples I've included here are his piano concertos, his preludes, his sonatas, and his arrangements there. But he did write lots of other styles, including operas, symphonies, other kinds of orchestral music, including chamber music, choral music, solo songs, you name it, he wrote it. Now, it's important to note that whilst Rachmaninoff was really writing in the 20th century, he did prefer the music of the Romantic period. And he's often considered a Romantic composer because of this. He did struggle with trends in modern music, and because of this, some people thought of him as being quite antiquated. So, in stark contrast to the people like Schoenberg, Webern, Berg, Stravinsky, etc., that we have already studied in class. Despite this, there are clear 20th century traits in his music. On the presentation now, there's a list, and what I want you to do is try and work out which traits would be considered 20th century. So pause the video and note down your answers now. Okay, hopefully, again, you've done that. And just to compare your answers, what I've done is I've separated these ideas into 2 columns. It would be useful to have these down in your notes because they are characteristic of Rachmaninoff's style, And all of these things are evident, in fact, in the Rhapsody. Okay, so what I want you to do now is actually have a listen to some of Rachmaninoff's music, specifically I should say, his fourth piano concerto. But I also want you to listen to Bartók's first piano concerto. You don't need to listen to the whole concertos or even the whole of any movement, but please can you listen to at least some of the first movement of both of these concertos. Now, these concertos were both written in 1926, yet hopefully you'll recognise they sound very different to each other. So pause this video, have a listen, and then answer this question, which is on Edmodo, which is what features of the Bartók help identify it as 20th century. Again, I hope you've done that, and I should see your answers on Edmodo once you've completed this lesson. It is quite interesting to note that both pieces, again, were written in the same year, yet they do sound as if they could have been written 50 years apart. They characterise two very different phases of the respective composers' careers. One, you can guess which, was trying to make his mark by provoking and pushing boundaries, whereas the other rested on his laurels a little bit in composing in a very comfortable style to him. I'll let you decide who is who. So Rachmaninoff recognised that he couldn't pursue his gifts for conducting, composing and performing all at once without really burning out. And after the failure of his fourth piano concerto, he decided to then focus on performing, particularly giving piano recitals. This actually led to a really intense schedule, but at least gave him financial security, which he was looking for. Eventually, he was able to build quite a luxurious villa in Switzerland, which is where he composed the famous Rhapsody. Interesting fact, he was outfitted with a gorgeous new piano by Steinway as well. So we're not focusing on the infamous Niccolò Paganini, but it's worth remembering that his celebrity status was based not just on his talent, but the legends surrounding how he supposedly acquired his talent. And this caprice that the Rachmaninoff piece is based on, or rather the theme, like his other 23, were written to essentially showcase his ability on the violin. Number 24 is definitely the most notorious and most famous, and itself is a set of variations on the opening theme. Time to pause again. This time I want you to get to know this theme either by playing it on your instrument, you've got the notation there, or listening to it on YouTube. So just type in Paganini Caprice 24 and you should find an infinite list of versions of that. Don't listen to all of the variations, but just the theme and maybe a couple of times just to get a sense of it. Once you've done that, I want you to address these two questions on Edmodo, which are what makes the theme so catchy and identify the harmonic progression. So whilst you've just got a solo line, there should be you should be able to work out the harmony that's implied and assume that there is one chord per bar, okay? So I've given you a multiple choice question on Edmodo to help with that. So pause the video and answer those questions now. Right, moving on. So when considering what makes the theme so memorable, hopefully you've come up with some ideas, but these are some things to consider and potentially get down in your notes. Firstly, it's a relatively short theme. So if we think of, say, late Romantic symphonies, for example, themes could be quite lengthy, and actually this example is only 16 bars long. We can split it into two sections, an A section and a B section. The A section is relatively short, it's just the first 4 bars there. And we do have a repeat before our B section. Repetitive elements which help make it quite memorable are the rhythm. So we have this motivic rhythm here, and you could divide that in multiple ways, but essentially this idea here. The shape of the melody, the way particularly this shape here, we can see it pivoting around, and a clear strong harmonic progression. Here we've got 1 5 1 5, and actually hopefully you've worked out that was A minor going to E, A to E, and then A to D to G to C, etc. The first half, so if you like the A structure, has a strong tonic dominant relationship. We're just oscillating between 1 and 5, whereas the second is cycling through fifths. We go from A to D to G to C. So interestingly, many composers have returned to this theme, and this list here, in fact, is just a few composers who've been inspired to write their own variations on this theme. What I want you to do is actually listen to Benny Goodman's and identify the genre, just quickly by putting that into Edmodo. But it would be nice for you to listen to a bit to get a sense of how composers have taken different approaches when varying this musical idea. So pause the video to do that now. Now, you've already got some notes down, but it's important to get some more info down, as of course this is the basis for the whole Rhapsody, okay? So in section A of this theme, again bars 1 to 4, I've got an enlarged copy here. The melody is based around a pair of rising perfect fifths, so the A to E, which you see here and here. The main motif, which we've called A here, is what you could call a loop of 4/16 notes. And this usually consists of a minor third following by descending conjunct motion. So the minor third is just here, and then we've got descending conjunct motion here. And the A motif is followed by a rising leap, which we've just mentioned obviously is the perfect fifth here. So these are some important elements to this part of the theme. Now section B, which is bars 5 to 12, now this is the full theme here, so we're focusing from here, begins with a sequence which also focuses on fifths and fourths. So for example, A to D and then G to C. So if you think you're starting on that A, we get to here, we go down to this D, we go to this G, we go down to this C here. And the B motif is introduced in bar 5. And it's similar, actually. There's a relationship between motif A and motif B here, except for that first interval, these guys here. And we have another sequence in bars 9 to 10, which is also continuing this idea of moving in fifths, but it's happening much faster. So these are some core elements to this theme, and some things that hopefully you've picked up on as well. Now, there is another theme. There's another theme which you could probably guess is the dies irae. And this is best explained by actually watching this video. So I did have a go at embedding the video in this, but because it's recording the audio, it just sounds quite bad. So what I want you to do is actually, again, pause this video and go to YouTube and just type in Vox, V-O-X, dies irae. And you should see, there's an image there that I've taken a still. You should find this video. It's about, just over, 5:48, so 5 minutes, 48 seconds. But very interesting context for this idea, this motif, if you like, and where it comes from. So pause the video and watch that now. Okay, so hopefully you've done that and you've got a sense and you understand that firstly, this is some Gregorian chant, and it's been a while since we've focused on medieval music, but it's all coming back now, as I said several times. So this is taken from a particular mass, which is the Mass for the Dead, or Requiem Mass. And it often, in the Romantic period, it was used as a leitmotif for things representing fate and death. Berlioz is one example of a composer who's done this. Rachmaninoff himself, he's actually used it in at least 17 of his own works. But in this example, he only focuses on the first 4 notes, and actually this seems to be a trend with lots of composers who use it, and you may have picked up on that in the Vox video. What would be good is actually if you could listen to a more extended performance of the Dies Irae. So if you just type in Dies Irae plain chant or Gregorian chant on YouTube and listen to a recording. And I also want you to work out which mode this chant is based on. And again, that question is on Edmodo. So pause the video to do that now. Okay, so a few things that I want you to focus on. Actually, I'm going to start with the third point. I'm going to put a link on Edmodo to a version of the score for the Rhapsody, and I'd like you to download a PDF. I'm assuming that you won't be able to print a copy, and that's okay. And this is where it'd be useful if you could please use it on an iPad or something where you can annotate and put notes. It might be convenient on a laptop, that's fine. But eventually you want to have a copy where you have your own annotations. And obviously I can't give you a physical copy because we're not in school at the moment. So it would be great if you could have that for our next lesson. But if not, we'll find a way around it. The other 2 points are for next week. So firstly, I want you to type up your notes and submit to the assignment on Edmodo. And then next, actually listen to the Paganini, so the original, if you like, in its entirety. So to get a sense of how that piece evolves, how it's transformed, how it is varied. So there's an assignment on Edmodo for you to respond to. But if you've got any questions or need any help, please do send me a message. Good luck and see you next time.